Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. My name is Eric Vogel. I'm a real estate investor, mastermind coach, husband to an amazing woman, and often my co-host, Tiffany, and father to two incredible boys. I'm on a mission to help you become a real estate investor and not only achieve seven-figure success like my wife and I did, but to do so with intention, direction, and clarity. If you want to transform your financial and personal goals, become the version of yourself you've always wanted, and reach your dream life ASAP, then you're in the right place. Thank you for deciding to hit that play button today. Now let's begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. This is show number 72, our interview with Mr. Jim Sheils. On today's episode, we have Jim Sheils, a real estate expert with extensive knowledge in the build-to-rent niche. He's a partner at Southern Impression Homes, a company that specializes in building rental portfolios in Florida's high-growth markets for individual investors and institutional buyers. In addition, Jim is the co-founder of 18 Summers, providing family education services to entrepreneurs and professionals seeking to strengthen their family relationships while succeeding in business. Let's welcome to the podcast, Mr. Jim Sheils. Welcome to our podcast, Mr. Jim Sheils. We are excited to have you. We just had a brief little conversation about his time in Costa Rica. You can see in the background the beautiful forestry right there. Welcome to our show, Jim.
Good to be here, Eric.
So I've read a lot about Jim over the past few years, especially when starting our family. And if you've listened to any of our podcasts in the past, we talk about hyper-intentionality and what are you doing with your time? How is it going to benefit future version of you? What check are you writing today that you want to cash in 10, 20 years? And when I found Mr. Sheils' content, I was like, that just speaks so well to me, especially with the 18 Summers. So I know that a lot of people like to bit and banter and like have some fun on the podcast, but I want to get right into it. What is 18 Summers and how does it benefit our listeners?
When I was first starting to do family talks, which was about a decade ago, and it's not something I planned on doing. I was a real estate investor, but I shared some pretty vulnerable things at a couple of masterminds, and they said, you need to speak on this. This is so important. And the 18 Summers principle actually came from a mentor of mine. When I started to explain what I was sharing with people and the simple rhythms that I had created with my wife to kind of keep our family intact, he said, man, Jim, these are so important. And I want to remind you, you got 18 summers. You got 18 summers. And this was coming from my 70-year-old mentor whose daughters were grown. But he said to me, look, I'm not saying they're not going to still be your kids, but those first 18 summers are different. And I've found if you do them right, they're going to want to come back for more. And you'll never have any regrets if you put this math equation to work to have some positive motivation to spend that intentional time like you talked about. Because Eric, back in the day, there was a lot of mentors out there that taught, hey, put your head down for the next 5 to 10 years, go for it, your family will understand. I think that's horrible advice, terrible advice. And I think there has to be an integration of, success in business and success at home, as both should work together as you move through, because the years are not all created equal. And that's about what 18 Summers is about, putting a positive intention on this quality time opportunity we have, that it will change. Like I said, I have kids from 20 down to 2. My 6-year-old spends a lot more time with me than my 20-year-old. And I think that's a good thing. But I'm really glad I was intentional at the time I had with my oldest. It's something that I've never regretted. And that's something we try to teach. How do you have that quality time embedded in your schedule while you build the business? Because real estate investing is not easy, but it can be done where you have success in both business and at home.
If you did these 2 or 3 things over the course of the next year, what are those 2 or 3 little things that would be the most impactful? Go do it right now. Where are you going to see the biggest return on that investment if you had 2 or 3 things that you could suggest to our listeners?
Absolutely. And this is what I talk about in my book, The Family Board Meeting, is the good news, Eric. I talk about rhythms, right? Rhythms. I love that word over habits, because habits, you can have a bad drinking habit. You can have a bad smoking habit. You can have a junk food eating habit, right? It sounds unintentional. Rhythms has that musical element, that soul to it, that keeping of the beat. That drum beat can keep your favorite song in line, right? I think the same thing with rhythms. So there's 2 rhythms that I encourage, and both of them include this principle, the one-to-one principle. if I had to say one of the most shocking discoveries I've had, Eric, out there is the top therapists and counselors. They don't make it as clear as this. And look, I've worked with them. I always try to have coaches and mentors in all areas of my life. But everyone kind of skipped over the one-to-one principle. And what this means is you got to separate the parts to strengthen the whole. That time with each of your children is sacred. And one-on-one time will put the magnifying glass on that relationship in a positive way. Same thing with your spouse. So the first and foremost I would tell people, Eric, and this is what my book is about, is if you are not having that weekly date with your spouse one-on-one, you are putting yourself in a very dangerous situation. And also you're giving up this fertile soil opportunity to really keep the relationship strong and intact. And I've been in front of some very influential rooms where I say, how many of you have a weekly date with your spouse? In less than 10% of the rooms, hands will go up. And these are very successful, intentional, good-hearted people, but they're busy. So what I've found is I have a weekly date with my wife, and then I have a quarterly day with each one of my children. This is really what 18 Summers was built on, where I started to say, you know what, if I look at my business, I have key clients, key team members, top investors in my business, and I schedule time with them. And so I started to schedule one day a quarter with each of my children, to give them that focus, go in on a day all about them. My phone was off, and that's something we'll talk about, but I spend a day a quarter with each one of my children. And this one day, Eric, is the pillars in our relationship. It's the reset button. So if people leave this podcast today and just say, I'm going to schedule a date, same bat time, same bat channel every week with my spouse, you will see a difference in your marriage within the next few months. Guaranteed. I've seen it too many times, especially if you're not doing it. And secondly, if you can just schedule a day a quarter, what you'll see the relationship with your children in a year, at least from the tens of thousands of people we've worked with, has been stunning. So that's the first step. The second step, Eric, I would say, is along with the one-to-one principle, you got to put intermittent tech fasting into your life, right? You were just telling me you and your wife take health very seriously. It sounds like we're aligned with, trying all sorts of things to really make the most of it. You got to be able to disconnect to reconnect. I appreciate technology. We would not be having this conversation, a few countries away right now. Yeah. But you have to have times of complete and total unavailability, and intermittent tech fasting is the same thing as intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, we're not giving up eating, Eric, right? We're just saying we're going to have the discipline to eat between this time and this time. And it does all sorts of things. Organ revitalization, good for blood flow, weight maintenance, muscle recovery, all sorts of things, right, has been shown from what I've read for intermittent fasting. Well, we found the same thing, Eric, for intermittent tech fasting. If you will just take certain times where you are unavailable on that date night, on that one day a quarter with your children, it is a game changer. Because what I found, and I can give some stories after you kind of unpack with me, but if you are always on, if you're always taking that next text, that next email, you've said to your family and the people closest to us, you're never truly available. And this is more important than we are. Now, that is tough to hear and swallow, because we're going, gosh, I'm doing it for my family. I want to provide, I want to be able to protect them. And my work, I think, is the best way. But again, there has to be times of complete and total unavailability. You're not giving up eating completely. You're only eating during these times. And I found once, and I'm my own addict, right? We always create what we need. I'm that guy who can grab the phone real quick, or let me check this useless Facebook thread, or answer this text right in front of my wife who's having a deep conversation. The more I got these things in line, Eric, with intermittent tech fasting, were huge. So those would be what I would say. If people don't listen to anything else on this podcast, I hope they will. But if they run with those two things, the one-to-one principle and intermittent tech fasting, their life can change for the better with their relationships.
Yeah, and like you said, there is a lot to unpack there. And I tell you, 2 years ago, if I heard this advice, I'd have been like, that sounds like my life is going to change dramatically. And I don't know if I'm willing to accept that. Well, 2 years ago, Eric was very different than who Eric is today. Eric today goes on a weekly date night with his wife. Eric today definitely tries to intermittent tech fast. I have not found the balance yet, but I am giving it a go. I am doing my best. When we go on our date nights, we have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we have an au pair that lives with us. And sometimes I get real nervous. Like, are the kids being rude? Are they tearing up the house? Is my au pair alive? Like stuff like that. That I often just go in and check the nanny cam, or I'll go in and just, make sure things are okay. But that's just that's a control side I've got to let go. I trust our au pair. He is wonderful. He's fantastic. But I have this like control issue, I guess, with letting go. And I think that bleeds over to so much of what I do in general. Like we have several renovation projects going on right now. And every time a text comes in, I'm like, is that the contractor? Is something wrong? Is that a delivery of supplies gone wrong? Is this what's going wrong? I need to fix it right now. And
Yeah.
I have this control issue of I've got to let be what it's going to be, because even if I do respond right now, I'm not fixing it.
Yeah.
The fix is going to come in time.
And I got a great story for that. First, we are our biggest critics. Entrepreneurs are very critical of themselves, at least in the general whole. So when you say, gosh, I was, checking in with the au pair, that's a good thing. Like my wife keeps her phone on date night because she has better control and will check in with our babysitter nanny. Where the issue for me, Eric, was rude me of 7 years ago would get a work text and start answering it at a nice dinner. Or, hey, let me take this quick call. I mean, it's outrageous to look back how I was, so you're going back to check on your children, not on the work thing. Now with the work projects, I got a good story that will really resonate with you and the audience. Another part of my intermittent tech fasting is I really try to turn off my phone for like 2 hours at the end of the day. Like 5:30 to 7:30, playtime, dinner time, I'm not getting pulled into anything. Well, we all break our own rules and we have to forgive ourselves, because if we don't, then we just completely shut down. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. One of these days, Eric, my daughter now is 9. Well, one of my children, my third child, Maggie, is 9. When she was 5 years old, I came home, and I usually leave like my phone in my computer bag or right in my glove compartment. I didn't. I kept it in my pocket. I get out and she's like, Daddy, can we go on the trampoline? We love our trampoline time. And I said, sure. So we get on the trampoline, Eric, and I feel that dreaded, or I hear that zzz, zzz, zzz in my pocket, right? And with renovation projects and all that going on, that noise has now set off my ADD initiative brain. What's going on? What's happened? What is this? I don't even have to see it, but now I've left the trampoline mentally and I'm there. Well, I pull out my phone, Eric. It's 5:30, mind you, and there's been a silly, really ridiculous mistake that delayed the closing. It was a closing of a property we were selling. I mean, we're talking something simple. So it's 5:30. I can't do anything about it. I'm upset. I'm going into fix scenario. I'm swearing under my breath, right? This is all happening on the trampoline. And I finally come to, and I'm on the trampoline again with my daughter, and she's staring up at me with that little lower quiver lip. You know what I mean? When they get really sad and, sweetie, what's wrong? What's wrong? I finally see, and she's like, oh, Daddy, why are you so mad at me? And it was like things paused, like it was a delay. And I'm like, wow. I just got so into this situation in front of my daughter. I think I'm good enough to multitask. I'm obviously not. I've worn my emotions and my business mind and initiative on my sleeve. And we know being in the trenches of real estate can be tough. And my daughter, seeing it, thought I was taking it. I was mad at her for something. Yeah. And it was such a lesson that we need those times of complete and total unavailability, because there's nothing I could do. Like you just said, it had to wait till the next day. Like if I had gotten that text 2 hours later after dinner time and family time and said, okay, that stinks, but I got to deal with it in the morning. But instead it was projected onto my daughter. So I just remind people of that story, because it's that important, because we're not as good as we think we are at separating the pieces when it's constantly trampling over things like family time.
Yeah, gosh, it's such a punch in the gut when your kids do or say something that just puts you in the spotlight of negative behavior. Or, for me, the worst thing I could ever be is a bad husband and a bad father. And when your kid does something that like highlights a negative thing, it's like, oh my gosh, I've got to do better. And one of those things that did it for me was like maybe a few months ago, my 2.5, soon to be 3-year-old, he has a little fake computer that we've built out of cardboard for him. And he just went over to his little desk area where he paints, and he pulls it out and he starts just typing away. I was like, what are you doing, buddy? He's like, I'm working, Dad. I'm working, Dad. And I was like, okay, can I help you? No, it's very important. I got to buy a house. And I was like in the moment, I was like, oh, that's so cool. He knows how to buy a house. But then I got to thinking about it more. And it's like, how much am I doing that around him?
Yeah.
And how much is he seeing me give that more attention? And obviously he's seen it a lot because he just recreated it, and it just hurt. And I was like, my gosh, I've got to stop. You know, I've got to, I'm not pulling my laptop out in the family room. I'm not pulling my laptop out when he's around.
Yeah.
Because when he's around, it's Matchbox cars and it's dinosaurs. That's what it should be. And it shouldn't be, hey, let's look at the pictures of this house together, which, you know, is a unique way of bringing them into it. But also it's, I'm doing what I want to do. I'm not doing something constructive that is going to help him cognitively and, you know, growth wise. So
exactly. And you're realizing things, especially at 3 and 1 at a very good age. People come to me at much older with their kids, and they're really playing catch up. Now the catch up can happen, but anyway, you look at it, they're playing catch up.
Yeah.
And you struck on something really important there, Eric, that I talk about in my book. When I spend these half days or days a quarter with each of my children, you know, it's one-on-one, my phone is off. But something that I've become really aware of a long time ago is I let them plan the day. Because you and I will have good intentions, but we're pushy entrepreneurs. Like, hey, let's go look at these house pictures. There's a time and a place for that, but that might not be what they want to do, you know, or he might say, hey, you know, I know you said you're in Atlanta. Let's go to a Falcons game. And that sounds exciting, but what if your 3 or 4-year-old has zero interest in football?
Yeah.
You know, and they wanted to plan a day where it was more you guys building something together or going someplace really simple. We get all proud because we're like, oh, isn't it great? We bonded, we took them to the game. But if they had no desire, then we're not giving them the chance to create the day themselves. You know, we want to let them plan the day and go all in. And that's where when you do that at a young age, and it's going to be cool to watch this unfold for you, they start to put together these days that uncover some of their, you know, gifts, talents, interests. And then when you go all in and you show that buy-in, that's where they feel trust. That's where they feel support. And they'll do more. You know, my oldest son that was just here, he has his own charter fishing business now at 20. Right away at the age of 18, the youngest you can get it, he got his captain's license, you know, and he's doing what he really loves. And we have mentors just above him that do a very nice lifestyle through this, financially, enjoyment-wise, you know. And what did he do on a lot of these days, Eric? He wanted to go fishing. And I'm a surfer. I'll choose surfing 10 out of 10 times over going fishing. But when my son wants to go fishing, I'm all in. And these are the types of things these days can unwind. And you got to let them choose instead of us always taking that initiative. Let them take the initiative.
Absolutely. So those are 2 really huge key takeaways of how to be hyper intentional in your family and in your marriage, with your children, with your spouse. Maybe you don't have children or a spouse and you just have a dog. Maybe take the dog to the dog park once a quarter and make them feel very important, right?
Exactly. We've got a few of those too.
Yeah, same. All right. So we talked a lot about, you know, 18 summers and making each of those summers count. And that really just resonates with my mission in life. I did a lot of these meditative RTTs, rapid transformation stuff. And when I've been doing them all, I've been trying to figure out what is Eric's purpose on this earth. And I used to be a high school teacher, and I thought, you know, I need to be a teacher. And really, I don't feel like I need to be a teacher. I need to be someone that helps people morph. And what always comes to my mind is the Phoenix rising. And it's always, how can we let our old self die, go to the ashes, so we can rise a better, more brilliant, more impactful, more purposeful person? What you're saying is just like resonating so hard with me in the sense of I am living in that, you know, rebirthed Phoenix of being impactful with my family and with my wife and with the dogs too.
Of course.
So I do want to get into another thing that you do. It's very, very intriguing to me, and definitely for our more investor-minded folks that may not have families and whatnot. And that is your build to rent. What you're doing with build to rent. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for 24 years now. And when I first went into it, Eric, you know, I was excited. I was passionate. but I didn't quite have the skills and the talents and the due diligence to do the right deals. I was doing a lot of deals and I did okay, but then it almost bankrupted me right into the, '08 dilemmas. And I was a very lucky person that was able to protect his investors, survive, and then move on. And from '08 moving on, I went into going from near bankruptcy to a model that made money, and it made good money. And that was working with bulk foreclosures, fixing them up, renting them or selling them to investors, doing a lot of volume in Northeast Florida. But it wasn't bankrupting me, but it was bankrupting my time. And I was running like crazy, and I could brag that I did all these properties and I owned all these properties, but it wasn't giving me what you just said you and your wife were looking for when you first went into this. And then about a decade ago, I finally hit stride. I burned my ships, Eric, on my old model. I only had one skill set, one that separated me from near poverty to abundance. I knew how to get an old property, fix it up, and either rent it or sell it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That is my whole recipe for financial abundance. That was it. And we got pretty good at it. But again, I wanted to have the time. I wanted to be able to be in Costa Rica a few months out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was once I hit the build to rent, which the term didn't even exist when we started it with my now building partner. But what I found is going from old fixer-uppers to new construction, both for myself and our clients, there was less headaches, less maintenance and repairs, less turnover, better growth, better resaleability, better areas, able to scale more. And, when we first started this 10 years ago, it was an experiment. We built $3 million worth of property in an area of Jacksonville, Florida, that we had done a lot of fixer-uppers. And it went okay at best. You're always going to learn in that first group. But we saw that there was quite an opportunity here. Fast forward to last year, we did 185 million in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had a real growth pattern with simple properties, single family, duplexes and quads. We build for ourselves and for investors in key areas of Florida that have fundamentals of growth, not the top tier. We don't build in Miami. We don't build in Tampa. We don't build in Orlando, but we stick to new construction and nearly now working with almost 1,000 investors, having management in place. We're able to build successful portfolios for our avatar buyer is normally very successful in their career or their other business. They want to be in a certain area of real estate where they have a portfolio they can lean on in years to come, or even some now. They're not in the right area personally. They don't have the time themselves. They don't have the experience, and that's where they lean on us.
Mm-hmm.
We had done that with fixer-upper foreclosure before, but now doing a few thousand new construction properties compared to the old fixer-uppers, there is no comparison. The numbers do not lie. And not only has it been cleaner for myself and for our team and for our investors, it creates more time, which is what we're all trying to buy back our time now. And that's one of the most important things I've found with the build to rent venture.
Yeah. Every word you said, I was like, gosh, that's what I need to do. I'm so tired of the renovations. I'm so tired of, all the things that come with buying a fixer upper. That's been my wife and I's bread and butter as well. The BRRRR process. And that's all we've done. And I mean, it's been very successful for us. We've been very successful, but it is a headache and it does take time and it is cumbersome. We have yet to do a new construction. It is one of those things like you haven't done it. So obviously it's going to be a little daunting, but the more you think about it, it's like, it makes just so much sense. So what would you tell someone like me that is married to their old way of doing things? I'm still doing it. I mean, I'm still buying fixer uppers. What do you tell someone like me that is just scared of it? It's like, I got to buy land. I've got to get surveys. I've got to get permits drawn up. I got to find a GC. I got to, how much of, what is the cost of it all? Like, what does it look like to build a $300,000 house versus renovating a $100,000 house into a $300,000 house?
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, the BRRRR method is fantastic. Again, there are lots of different niches in real estate that can get you where you want to go. So I'd be the last person to bag that because that's what I did for still the majority of my career, 14 of the 24 years.
Yeah.
However, there were some downsides. You know what I mean? I own so much less property now, Eric, compared to, 2010, let's say 11, but I have more equity and more cash flow than ever before. So what does that tell you? It's kind of my rule, the new construction, just to look over the 20,000 foot view, you can own less of better quality with less leverage and have more freedom. And that really attracted me because the Burr is very intense. And that's a great building block. But I found the new construction, it will have a different learning curve than Burr. It's gonna, like you said, I got to buy land. I got to, get the approvals. I have to, have a build, either become my own builder or have a builder I can work with that can get my specs. But you had to do all that for Burr. You didn't know how to identify, old construction, old fixer-uppers in what area, how to get them fixed. And let me tell you, there's a big thing that, yes, there's a learning curve with getting, a lot approved or the blueprint approved by the county and the city. But there can be less surprises if you have a good building partner or become a good builder yourself. Because we all know with fixer-uppers, we all saw that Tom Hanks movie. Remember The Money Pit? I'm sure.
Oh gosh, yes. If you haven't watched that movie right now, go put it on your watch list.
When's this going to be done? 2 weeks. So that's what I found with the older ones. Again, they're great, but it's different, and there's less surprises with the new construction. Absolutely, because you open one wall and you're going, well, I wasn't expecting that. What's in the front yard? I didn't expect this, sewer main from 1957 to burst right now. New construction, you're starting with a blank canvas. Yeah. So yes, it can be more expensive. Yes, it can have a bigger, a higher barrier to entry. But remember, there's also some good things to that too. So the thing I always say, like I was talking to my oldest son about this, and it wasn't about real estate. It was another subject he was interested in. He was interested in creating a product in the fitness industry. And I said, I've never done that, but I have friends that have. And my mentor, since I was a kid, one of my main mentors always said, find someone who's done it and ask them questions. And that's what I always say to people. If you're looking at this, maybe there's someone, I know there's people up near you because we've built up near you. Is there someone that would spend a little time with me talking about it? Refer me to a builder that would actually be sensible to work with. Yep. Share some of, the things that you look for, the price points you're at. You find someone that's been there, talk to them. And that's the starting point. You know what I mean? And then no one says, and this took a few years of transition of me seeing proof of concept to say, hey, I'm hanging up my rehab shoes. Yeah. You start with one, the same way you probably started with Burr. Start with one. Try one. That's not going to bankrupt you. You're not pulling away from your cash cow completely of what you know. You start with one. Yep. And see how that goes. Learn the lessons from it. And then if it makes sense, you take that next step. And then you talk to the person who's been there, done that, and say, oh, yeah, well, you probably should have done this and this. That's where you're taking educated risks, stepping in that direction, but not saying, you know what, never done new construction, know anything about it. Hell with this. I'm getting rid of Burr, which has worked for us, and doing this. Like, that'd be crazy. Yeah. But that's what I'd recommend. Talk to someone who's done it and then start with one. See how it goes. Normally, and this is what we used to be told for Burr, right? That first fixer-upper I bought, I remember real estate investors saying, look, it's probably not going to ruin your life. All those, that fear that we get built up on, you're going to get through it. It's not going to retire you, but it's not going to break you either. But you're going to have to go through the motions. And I always joke with people, the best real estate class I ever took, and I've spent hundreds of thousands on my real estate education, was 432 North M Street. That's the first property I bought in Central California. And, and the same thing will probably be true with that first new construction property.
Yeah. My absolute most expensive real estate class has definitely been 464.
Okay, there you go.
We've all got those courses. And, you said something really important right there at the end. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on real estate education. Y'all, you cannot spend enough money on educating. You can over educate, especially if you're trying to learn about all the shiny squirrels or shiny object out there. Find that one thing and hammer down on it, but never stop investing in yourself. You have to invest in yourself. You've got it. If you haven't been in a mastermind, go find one. Make sure it's a good one, right? If you haven't, joined any type of or went to any type of conference or done anything like that, go to one. Meet the people. Surround yourself with like-minded people. A lot of people are like, I listen to all these podcasts, I watch all these webinars, and I really want to be a real estate investor. What am I missing? It's like you're missing the most important side of it. It is the people side of it. You have to start getting and surrounding yourself with the people that are doing it. And like you said, yeah, there's probably someone around me that is building to rent. I actually know a couple of people that are doing it. I just haven't felt like that's the avenue I need to go down because Burr has worked so well for us and continues to work well for us. But as I'm moving into the next stage of life where my kids are getting they're going to get older, and I'm going to want to spend more time with them, even more and more. How can I pull away from my business just a little bit? How can I pull away from all the maintenance tickets from the, couple dozen properties we have and reduce it to maybe just 10 properties? How can I reduce the amount of maintenance tickets and time on the phone with contractors? And the sewer pipe just blew up. It's from 1905, and you're not going to experience that with new construction. I did have a question for you, Jim. What is the ideal lot? What does it look like?
So I believe the ideal lot is an infill lot. And we get a lot of pushback, and we've worked with the bigger hedge funds and some family offices that they want to build a whole community. That's fine. And we'll do that. I got to tell you personally, Eric, for me, that old school investor training I got is, what would you say? Find a fixer upper in a solid area, priced below the median, that's, got a good balance of home ownership and renters, right? Because if you go to an all renter area, it's tougher. It usually has bigger turnover, more, crime issues or things like that, worse resaleability. So find that area with a mixture of homeowners and renters. Right. We're able to do that when we buy infill lots. And also with an infill lot, like it sounds so cool. Oh, you bought this big piece of land and you're developing it into all these lots. You know what? That's a 2 to 3 year wait then. And I've had to really learn from my training of where I can buy a home, fix it up, and have it resold or rented within 4 months. 3 years feels like a very long time, and it is. And you got to have holding power and stuff but the infill lots, I mean, they're already usually approved. I mean, the utilities are right there. You're in an existing neighborhood that already shows. So people, oh no, I need to do this whole community. I disagree, and even us who have gotten to a bigger volume, we buy infill lots in bulk in areas we like. So it's almost like our trades they're not at the one same community project, but they're in the same area. So our trades can get there, our suppliers can get there. So those are my favorite type. And also for our investors, I'm always trying to mitigate risk, right? Our investors, again, our average investor, Eric, they don't want to do what you and I do. They want to understand it. And I say, you need to understand it, but they have a very successful career. Maybe they're a doctor, or they have a successful business, or they're in tech and they're working 70 hours a week and they don't want to take on a second or third job, but they have really good disposable income they're trying to put into real estate. Right. So that's where we step in, and we need to remove the headaches. An existing neighborhood already has proof of concept. We all know that simple recipe, right around the median or below the median. Existing home ownership and renters where you'll drive the neighborhood at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, no problems. That's where we buy our infill lots, and we're able to get those solid numbers. And so that's why I like the infill lot. I think it's very overlooked, and some of the big guys puffing their chest out and say, oh, we want only a whole community. That's great. But it goes against some of my old school things. Yes, we do them and we've built them before, but I'd rather go into that existing neighborhood.
Now, just for clarification to our listeners that maybe, not understand what infill is, are you talking about a neighborhood that has just recently been developed and there's a couple of vacant lots in there inside that community that has not been built yet and they just can't seem to offload them?
Great question. It can be both. So, there's communities sometimes where, hey, these large national home builders go in and they build their houses, right? And most of those are owner occupied. But we found that these big builders, they get unfocused for the very end of a project and want to go to the next one. So we've had times we've gone in and bought the last 15 to 30 lots available in the community that they just haven't built out. We'll buy those off them because they're already moving on to a big project. So that's a newer construction neighborhood, just finished. And we'll buy out those final lots because they get shiny object and go to the next big project. Absolutely. I'm also talking about existing neighborhoods, Eric. We'll go into areas where the houses were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Now, these are solid areas. These are areas that you and I would walk, again, 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, but they're older homes. A lot of them have already had a re-renovation done, and there's lots of home ownership. But these are where there's these vacant lots that were just never built. And some of these existing neighborhoods like that, especially where our areas in Florida that we focus on, they're all there. They're just sitting there. There's a nice little house, older house, but nice house, with pride of ownership. And there's a vacant lot on, right next door or a little ways down the road. Those ones I really like because that neighborhood really has proof of concept.
Yeah. Is there anywhere you go to find these vacant lots, or do you just get on Google Earth and just go looking around?
I mean, if you wanted to start at the most basic level and you're looking in a certain area, driving neighborhoods and find out who own it is basic. It's hard now, again, when you have a decade where we've grown. I mean, we have a 17-person land acquisition team. So we're always buying lots. And, we have a very great off-market system. We had to work up to that. But again, don't let that intimidate you, because I'm saying, if you don't want to do it on your own, come work with us. But if you do want to do it on your own, well, then start small. You don't need to hire this whole acquisition team. Start looking in areas, get on the MLS, see if there's something that starts to work within your numbers. Because again, if you're starting with one, you only need one lot.
That's it. So if people are looking to invest with you, Jim, or if they are looking to learn from you, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you about your build to rent program?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about our building company, Southern Impression Homes, my wife and I actually just created something called the JJ Playbook. Jim and Jamie Playbook. It's about our journey in real estate that I just talked to you about, and how we settle into build to rent, and how, we're working with nearly 1,000 investors right now with our team. Our team's about 145 people right now. That's the best place, jjplaybook.com. You'll get the first 3 chapters of our book free. We have a book coming out in February that we're hoping to get to the top of the Wall Street Journal with our publisher. Our last one did that. But this is really our journey about build to rent. It shows the principles, the fundamentals, why it makes sense, some case studies of different investors that have worked with us. So that's a great place. Go to jjplaybook.com.
Outstanding. We're going to make sure that gets in our show notes so that our listeners can, if you're driving, don't stop and write that down. Just check the show notes when you get where you're going. Jim, I have had the absolute best time this morning talking about intentionality with our families, with our spouses, and, a new concept to me. It's definitely not new, but the build to rent, and how can the small investor get into it? And maybe you don't want to be an investor, and maybe you don't want to be an active build to rent investor. Maybe you just want to be a part of the process, be a part of someone that is doing really big things. Well, Jim's the guy, y'all. He's Southern Impression Homes. I did a quick look at that, and it's impressive what y'all got going on over there. And I've really enjoyed my time with you this morning. I want to get down to Costa Rica, check out your house.
Come down. We love visitors.
I definitely want to see the chiropractor and acupuncturist down there. See what kind of swing they put on it down there.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. They got to keep you in good surfing shape down here, so they get at it.
Well, I've never surfed before, so maybe
we'll change that too, Eric. I love first waves for people.
Oh, outstanding. You sound, it seems like if I went to Maui, I'd be doing that with Brandon Turner. But if I go to Costa Rica, I'm doing it with Jim Sheils.
That's it.
All right, y'all. If you want to learn more about Jim and his wife, Jamie, and their company and what they're doing, please check the show notes for all of the links of everything we spoke about today. Follow him on Instagram. I put his Instagram handle right here in the video if you're watching on YouTube. If not, that will be in the show notes as well. All right, Jim, thank you so much for your time today, and definitely look forward to hanging out with you sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
We are immensely grateful for you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we invite you to subscribe to our show. We understand that many of you tune in regularly, but perhaps haven't had the chance to hit that subscribe button yet. Don't worry, it's effortless. It takes about 3 seconds to follow or subscribe on your platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're enjoying the show. Your support is invaluable to us and has played a crucial role in the tremendous growth of our podcast. We sincerely appreciate your assistance in any way, shape, or form. Together, we can launch this podcast to even greater heights.